Tēnā koutou katoa. Nau mai hara mai ki tēnei hui o tātou, tēnei kōmiti, ai nei te mihi ki a koutou. Nā kaimahi o tēnei kaunihera, nā kai kaunihera, nā memo o te hāpori, e mā taki nei, ai tēnā koutou. So I'm just going to hand over to Councillor Mackenzie for our Karakia.
Tukua te wairua, kia reri ki ngā kaumata, hai arahai i a tātou mahi, mei tātou, mei tātou, wai i ngā tikanga a ratumā, kia mau, kia ita, kia kore, i ngaro, kia pupuri, kia whakamaua, kia tina, hami e, hui e, takia.
Kia ora, Councillor Mackenzie. Good karakia, that one. Like that one. Thank you. So yeah, welcome again to our meeting. And it's great to have Alice and Oscar here, our youth members of our committee. And so their first sort of meeting that they've started from the start. So kia ora, welcome along. So we've got a quorum present. We've got everyone here, I think. Councillor East is around, but he's just not here at the moment. And Councillor Swiggs.
Councillor East told me he went to a funeral. So he may. Yeah, I think he's planning on coming back. So.
Who did that? So sorry, I'll start it again. Did we get anyway, we got Councillor Swiggs as an apology, sorry, and Councillor East also. And in the terms of the order of business, we're just going to be doing our public excluded minutes and public excluded resolution status report within the open minutes. So we'll get to them and we'll do that when we get to them in the different items. So we've got no conflicts of interest that anyone's noted, no public forums or deputations, no extraordinary or urgent business, and no notices of motion. Well, that's been given to me. So we'll move on to item 7.1, which is our unconfirmed minutes from our last committee meeting on the 10th of May. Is there anyone that's got any questions about the minutes that have been put out? No? So therefore we've got our resolutions on the screen in front of us. So we've got number 1 there, which is about these minutes here in the open agenda. And then there's also the public excluded minutes that we've just mentioned. So do I have a mover for these motions? Councillor Burns, seconder, Councillor Ward. Any discussion needs to be held? No? All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That's item 7.1. We'll move over onto our report items. And the first one is item 8.1, which is our committee resolution status report. Does anyone have any questions, clarification, or comments they'd like to make on item 8.1? All good. And like I said, we're also going to bring the public excluded resolutions to sign them off here. So do I have a mover for any of these resolutions? Yep, Councillor Edge and second Councillor Southworth. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Oh, what's that? Oh, true. Welcome, Councillor Swiggs. Good to have you there. Cool. Well, no problem. No abstentions. No. Oh, carried. Thank you. Oh, happy birthday. Kia ora, Councillor Swiggs. We're going to move along to 8.2 now, which is our program update for Q4. Now, just to note, Q4 was up until the 30th of June. So we've actually, this is a retrospective update, remember, but important to think about things that are going forward in this report. So do we have anyone to speak to this? Are we going to, sorry, Emma and Jess. Haramai. So I'll hand over to you guys if you want to introduce anything in the paper, and then we'll open it up for any questions and then the resolutions. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, through Mr. Chair. So the purpose of this paper, we present this paper to the committee each meeting, is to update the committee on the progress of the regional and strategic leadership and climate change and community resilience portfolios. The paper notes a number of the key achievements since the last meeting, and happy to take the paper as read and answer any questions that the councillors may have.
Thanks, Jess. Councillor Burns, you go first.
Kia ora, thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks very much. I just want some clarification. Page 34, item 21.3, talks about undertaking the one marine biosecurity survey in each Kaikoura, Littleton, Akaroa and Timaru location, and I understand why it hasn't occurred. Is there any update on that, and something a little more specific than the latter half of 2023? Kia ora.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question, Councillor. Yeah, just looking at Fiona in the background there, but no, we don't have a further update in terms of the timing. But once we do know, we'll.
Thanks, Jess. Anyone else with the question? Yep, Vicky.
So I've got two. The first one is around the Waitaha Action to Impact Fund. Really it's good to know that it's currently being publicised and is underway. I wonder if this is looking forward. It's in progress. Do we have any sense of how many people we're getting coming through applicants? Have we got a sense of that at this stage? And just noting that it closes on the 18th of September? Yeah, 18th of September.
I'm not sure what interest we've had, so we'd need to go back and see how many applications that we've got. I haven't got that information now, but we have been quite conscious of just setting expectations around sort of the funding that's available for this round. As you'll be aware, we had already allocated some of the funding to multi-year projects, but yeah, I don't have a number of how many exactly have applied so far.
I didn't think to ask that question earlier, but I just realised that would be interesting to know. And then my other question is around target 5.3 with the compliance monitoring. And really, I'm not sure at what stage I asked, but I would like to have a report come back on that, because I am quite concerned that we don't seem to be improving on our compliance monitoring statistics. And I actually think that the target of 80% of monitoring for our high priority consents is already on the lower side of the target that I would personally like to see. And I know there's a process we'll go through for our long-term plan to review some of those. But having seen some of the benchmarking from a report that covers regional councils across New Zealand, we're really not doing well here. And it's so fundamental to our, how we implement our plans that we spend a lot of money on. So I don't know, do I do this at a later stage, Councillor Pauling?
No, I think we've worked with staff, and we've got a staff recommended updated resolution around that. So we'll do that when we get to the resolutions. Councillor Tapu, thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
To Vicky's question then about compliance monitoring is even if we're not meeting the level of service, but we're only far behind it, are we finding what do they call a fiery platform? Is there a major issue out there with non-compliance, or is in fact are we finding a high level of compliance and therefore not a major concern? Because that balance out, if there aren't major concerns and we're finding in monitoring compliance, then meeting that level of service may not be quite as critical as Vicky would suggest.
Yes, so I think we're going to bring that back. So the resolution is going to be around bringing back a report to our next committee meeting on this. So we can, but that's a good point to highlight, Councillor Mackenzie. Any other? Yeah, we'll go Councillor Robinson.
Hi. I was wondering why, and on page 24, the risk assessment and legal compliance didn't highlight issues in many of the strategies that have failed, such as the coastal plan and some of the climate change issues. because we're delayed, I can't see how that can't be declared as some sort of compliance risk. And also, with regards to the climate emergency and our declaration of 2019, the statement of climate emergency also includes the IPCC special report, October 2018, which highlights that we need to invest swiftly in climate resilient energy, land, urban and infrastructure in our portfolio. And I'm wondering why that also hasn't been listed as a risk.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Good questions, Councillor. In terms of the risk assessment in the paper, absolutely accept that that could be further expanded in terms of the assessment there of the risk of not meeting some of our levels of service. Andrew Parrish is here just in terms of talking to the coastal plan and the delays there, just in terms of that work and the integrated planning framework. So maybe I'll hand Andrew just to touch on that. And we'll also, for the next papers that come to this committee and to other committees, we can look at how we're assessing the risk associated with these reports and not meeting certain levels of service and targets as well.
Very good, Gina.
I just wanted it to make sure it was really clear in the risk assessment. That's my most worrying thing, I guess. So we can just look at that and know it's still a current risk, as opposed to having to pour through detail. So we can just reflect back as well. But yes, I just wanted to make clear that it is quite a clear risk. And I know it's coming, but yeah, thank you.
Totally appreciate that feedback. And yeah, Andrew, just some coastal plan stuff.
Sure, councillors. Over the last couple of years, this council has worked really hard to build an authentic partnership with Mana Whenua. Part of the development of that partnership and the formation of it has come down to us needing to adapt our work program to align with the speed and aspirations of our partner. Because of that, you have had conversations around the Toroputuia table on a number of occasions around our overall work program in terms of redeveloping our regulatory framework. Where you've landed on that is that we need to focus our attention on the regional policy statement in the first instance, and then work to develop an integrated regulatory framework that delivers on the visions and objectives of the regional policy statement. It was actually our partner that came and proposed to us a timeline between 2025 and 2028 to build that integrated plan, which will involve the coastal plan as well. There is a need to talk widely with our community about that direction that we've received through partnership. We intend to bring a paper to this council to reconfirm that timeline of both the regional policy statement and the development of the integrated plan. So the amalgam of the land and water plan and the coastal plan into a Q-Tuki-Tai, mountains to sea document. I believe that will occur in October this year. Kia ora.
Thanks, Andrew. Is there any follow-up?
Yeah, I was to that, or
I'll wait for the resolution.
just going to comment on Councillor Robinson's question around the climate change declaration as well. So, yeah, look, since the LTP was developed, one of the other projects within that LTP was to develop a climate action plan in collaboration with the community. So that was to give effect to our work across the organisation and to bring that together so that we can clearly articulate to the community what work we are doing and how we're supporting climate action, both from an adaptation and a mitigation perspective. That work, as you know, is underway, and we'll be bringing back to council over the next couple of months work around where the climate action plan has got to from a strategic perspective, and also the types of actions that we need to undertake to deliver against our declared emergency. As part of that, and also part of the development of our long-term plan, is the funding associated with taking actions that are identified within that climate action plan, some of which will be through our existing work. Other things will be part of separate actions that may or may not require some sort of funding. We also had a discussion through the last annual plan consultation on a climate levy, and that was about whether the community thinks that we should be investigate a climate levy. Since then, we've been doing a whole lot of work around funding and financing of climate action, and we've received some reports that are in draft at this point in time, and we'll bring those through to the committee as well, around how we may fund levy, maybe one aspect of that, but there are other mechanisms to fund climate action as well. We also have a target in the level of service here, page 27, which is around investing in activities to improve climate change outcomes. So the methodology that we were trying to develop there to understand where are we spending money at the present time in the climate change space. So part of that was actually brought through, and this was something that hasn't been updated in this last annual plan, year 2. There was decisions that were made and hasn't been reflected going forward. But this measure was no longer going to be reported against. It was essentially being folded into the other work that we're doing in terms of the climate action plan and how we fund that work. So we'll be able to demonstrate through that where we're taking action across the organisation in partnership and where that money's being spent. And that's the purpose of that level of service as well.
Thanks, Jess. And really good question, Genevieve. Like, it's reminding us of that resolution that was passed by council in 2019. So it is good to bring that back. But like Jess said, I think the climate action plan, which there is a reflection of in the chair's report at the end, which we can have a discussion on then, that work that's going on with the Mayoral Forum plus our work that we're doing is going to be able to lay that out for us. And of course, things take time to get into that structure. So yeah, it'd be good to bring that up then. Anyone else got a question on this paper? Thanks, Andrew, as well. Thank you for that. No? All good? Oh, we'll move. Well, thanks, Jess and Emma. You can step back from the table. Thank you very much. We'll go to the resolutions if we can bring them up. So we've got one there that was in the paper, and then the second one there is really in relation to Councillor Southworth's point that she made, but also, you know, we know there's the consenting backlog stuff we've got to do, and so that'll be good to bring that up. So level of service 35, which is on page 27 of our agenda, we'll notice there's a couple of crosses, red crosses on there. So this is about just bringing an update back to this committee on those particular matters around the consent backlog and the compliance work. So that's what the resolution is there. Do I have a mover for the resolutions? Councillor Southworth, thank you, and Oscar to second. Thank you so much. Should we have discussion? Do you want to speak to this as the mover?
I can. I sort of spoke through it earlier. I sort of didn't want to miss my moment. But yeah, it is really important. It's the heart of Environment Canterbury's work, really, and it's part of the whole cycle of plan formation and then the CME side of things. So it's just really important that we stay across that, and particularly given that we're not achieving in these areas. So thank you.
Could you want to speak to it as the seconder?
I just agree.
Cool, thank you. Anyone else want to speak to the motion? Yep. Peter? Or you can discuss it. We're in the
Sorry, Mr. Chair. How do you see that, Mr. Chair?
the debate now, so you can go for it.
I don't want to bring this up with staff at the table, but I cannot understand what Genevieve's question was about risk on coastal plan. We've discussed it probably 10 times in this session since we've come back in October, and the explanations around that and how that will be handled have been given. And I'm not too sure of saying that we need to elevate that as a risk. I'm not sure what you're getting at, actually.
I think what it is, Peter, it's within the paper itself. So each paper has a section about what are the risks associated with stuff in the report. And I think it's okay to note that there are delays in processes, as well as the stuff around the climate emergency stuff that often we probably overlook because we are aware of them, but it is important to note them, and they haven't been noted. So I think that was the point. I think that's fair enough.
100%, but we have a coastal plan. We have a coastal plan, and there is a national coastal plan, right? So we have coastal plans. So what's the risk? Is it specific That's the
What we should
first
bring
question.
up.
Well,
Hang on, Councillor. But I think from my perspective, the risk is that lots has moved on since that plan was done, Peter. So there's inherent risk in the fact that there's a lot more issues than there were in 2010 or whenever it was done. So that's all that needs to be noted. So,
I'm not disagreeing with that, but we've assessed that risk and we're dealing with it through the RPS.
Yeah, but it's still on this.
it's Robinson there.
If it keeps following through from agenda to agenda, it's still a current risk and it's not notified as such. In the Audit Risk and Finance Committee, we look at things like this and it's constantly on there. So yeah, and talking about the coastal plan, yes, it is in situ, but it's old and it's not reviewed. And there's
Okay, my
so the New
question,
Zealand
that,
Coastal Policy Statement, Policy 11 states that we need an up-to-date coastal plan, and that is in breach of, the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement, Policy 11 says that we have to have a current and meaningful. I'm just saying it's a risk. I'm not saying, I'm not disagreeing with anybody that we've talked about it, but if it's here as lots of red crosses, then it should be on a risk assessment.
I think it's a fair enough.
issue with this, Mr. Chairman. I think we have got a serious issue with this. Why does it keep coming up when we have a solution?
I think we have a process going forward, Peter, but it doesn't mean there's no risk. Do you understand that?
I need my own one joke. I can understand.
I would say, Peter, does this affect the resolutions we've got in front of us? Like
These meetings, Mr. Chairman, are about visibility. These meetings are about, so we've got, on one hand, we've got saying this is risk, 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 risk. And on another hand, we've had ad infinitum meetings about what we're doing. Last Friday, we talked about this in Te Rauputuia and what we're trying to do with our regional policy statement and how the integration of the land and the coastal thing is more important than going to fix up the risk in the coastal plan. And the fact, and you may have even said that, Mr. Chairman, that we're going to end up with one plan.
And that's what we've just heard from Andrew. I think that's why it's good that it's been highlighted today, because this is a public meeting. So that's good. So the risk has been identified by Councillor Robinson. The staff have responded saying there is a solution in place. But the note is that it should have been noted in the paper. And I agree with that. And that's probably my error that I didn't pick that up in that section of the paper when we reviewed this. So I think it's okay. It's all good. And we do have solutions in place, but they are still quite time poor, like 2025 to 2028. It's a long way away. So it's all good.
Would it help if I put a recommendation that we remove this from the risk profile in this committee because we are doing something about it?
Peter, it's not in the attachments to the paper. It's in the paper itself. That's all that was worth noting, that there are some risks with the work program. Yeah. Yeah.
These are public documents, right? These are public documents. Every time you look at them, you say, well, there's crosses there again.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing to say about what we're doing about this. And we've spent 2 years discussing what we're going to do about this. The fact that Councillor Robinson doesn't agree with it is another point.
Councillor Robinson didn't raise that, Peter. She's asking that to be raised as a point to note that there's inherent risk in that. There's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. So I'm going to overrule that, whatever, if I can do that. I just think we should move on to our resolutions, actually. So thanks for that, Chair Scott, and we can definitely bring this up again. But I think, and at the Audit Risk Finance Committee, that is the place to have those discussions around the actual risk that come back to council. But there's nothing wrong with noting in papers to make sure they're complete. That's my point. All good. I don't really want to have a discussion about that point. I'd rather move on to the resolutions if that's okay. So we've got a mover and a seconder. Does anyone else want to discuss the resolutions on the table? No, if not, cool, put it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Any abstentions? All good, carried. Thank you. We're going to move to 8.3 now. which is our long-term plan impact framework. Emma, are you coming back to the table? Now, this is an important paper for us to highlight to the community that our process for the long-term plan coming up, and also the work we've been doing internally around the impact framework, which you'll hear more from Emma about. So kia ora, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to introduce the process for development of our next 10-year long-term plan. So it really just it sets out the timeframes for that and the approach. We're at the stage of looking at how we're going to deliver the long-term plan through our approach of being very clear about the 3 core services, and it's providing an update of those. The strategic direction was adopted by Council in July this year, so that provides the overarching direction for that. And I'll take the paper otherwise as read, and very happy to take questions.
Cool. Any questions for Emma about this paper? Yep, Councillor Davies.
So 2.1 around refining and confirming draft work programs. Am I correct in thinking that's going to be happening in October and November?
So we've got a series of briefings coming up in September, which will actually look at some of the work within the programs, and then October will be the month where we'll focus then on presenting the budgets of that. So yeah, it'll be over the time period of September to November, with a real concentration in October.
Good question, Councillor Davies. Councillor Burns.
Sure, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, hi, Emma. Do you have any sort of, initial ideas around how the consultation material for enabling the community to engage with the LTP in 24 may look?
Through the chair, it's early days on that. I might look to Tafflin to provide some more information on that. But once we've got better clarity on what the sort of key issues are that we want to go out to the community and have conversations around, that's when we'll be developing that consultation documentation. The consultation generally, I think it's scheduled for sort of late February, when we actually go out formally with the document, and we're open generally for around 4 weeks.
Just to add, my suggestion would be to perhaps look at how Christchurch City Council engaged with their annual plan. I personally thought the scoring out of 100 was a good initiative, and it gave people a bit more of an understanding on how difficult it can be at times to juggle that priority. So that might be worth consideration. Kia ora.
Yeah, kia ora, Councillor Burns. Taff?
Sure.
Yeah.
For you, Chair, thank you. Thank you very much for the suggestion. Once we know what it is that we're consulting on, as Emma said, once we know what the options are that we're putting out there, then we'll be bringing back to Council some information around what that might look like, and confirming up the timing, who we want to talk to, where councillors might be involved, and what participating mechanisms we might be able to use.
Count.
I'm on the same topic really, and the catchment committee hopes to bring some recommendations. Craig and I will bring some recommendations to council about some of the bespoke solutions for various catchments across the region. So we'd quite like that to be community focused, those parts of the conversation. And I'm not familiar with the City Council's feedback form, but I was impressed with the Selwyn District Council's form, I think, for their LTP, where they listed the various projects, talked about the cost, talked about what it cost individual ratepayers, and then basically had a yes or no answer for those. And I think for some of the things that perhaps the catchment committee might might be trying to recommend, that might be quite a good format for our consultation document. So I'm hoping that perhaps you might be able to consider those, that sort of format as part of our consultation document.
Councillor Keith, sorry, push your button.
We're very keen to look at, what's worked well for other councils and other organisations and consider how we can do that, and particularly anything that really sort of helps the community engage on these topics.
Right. Any other questions, councillors? Or Oscar and Alice? Cowboy? Oh, thanks, Emma. Thanks so much. So we've got some resolutions to put here. One is to note the paper and the process, but also just to agreeing to the next steps, as you've heard that Councillor Davies asked about. So we've got some work, and draw your attention to page 43 as well, with the diagram there about the sort of high level dates moving out to for the rest of the year. The work we have to do, and like Emma said, the intense work in October around the programs and the funding and that. So for the councillors that haven't been through the long-term plan process before, a lot of work to do in the next 3 months, and it'll be good to get stuck into that. So our briefings and meetings over the next 2 months are really critical. So do I have a mover for these resolutions? Councillor Mackay and Councillor Sunkel, second it. Any discussion? Do you want to speak to these? No, all good. Yep. Councillor Each.
Just clarification really of how the development of the long-term plan fits in with our one plan regional policy statement update, and thinking about the implications for kind of a new way of thinking within the context of an LTP, which is a 10-year plan. How are those two going to actually fit together if we're not quite developed yet with our regional policy statement?
I don't know if Andrew's still in the room, is he? But yeah, Catherine might be able to help with that.
I can try, and then you can put me right if I go off track. But the RPS will be developed by the end and notified by the end of last year. That you'll also be aware there's a lot of change in the government regulatory reform, and so from a budgeting perspective, we're looking out 10 years and thinking about what will need to be in place to actually implement those new plans as they come through and the regulations as they come through. So it's certainly, we're very mindful of the 10-year horizon for which we're budgeting, and we're doing our best to look out and see what will be required. So certainly in terms of the development of the plan and the other and the integrated plans through to 2028, that will be budgeted in the way that it has been at the moment, and we're expecting to come to you to talk about debt funding that as we go through in the same way as we have at the moment. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. So in effect, it's in the development of the long-term plan and the budgeting process, there will need to be some assumptions about what the future might look at. I mean, we've got a 2.2 up there, which talks about the 30-year infrastructure strategy, for example, and we've talked about that being an insufficient time frame, and that maybe we should be looking at a 100-year time frame. So those sorts of things can still be discussed as we develop it, even though we might be approving this today. That may change in the next few months going forward as we sort of gaze into the future a bit more.
And as you all know from your experience, I mean, we do review the budget annually, and every 3 years we review the long-term plan. So as we go forward, we get a better picture and can build that in.
I mean,
really, I mean, in terms of the LTP, we're budgeting for 10 years worth of expenditure, and 100 years or 30 years out, none of us would be able to control that. But what we can control is where we have projects where we may not be able to afford it, or the community might say we can't afford all this at once. So let's stage the development of the project, and I think that'll be particularly important for the infrastructure strategy certainly around river management. So, you work out your priorities and then stage the budgeting to coincide with the work program, which is what's described in phase 3, I think.
Mackenzie. Well, I agree, and I think your point, Catherine, about the the chance to review next year when we do the annual plan for the first year of this next LTP, that's when you can catch up. And, by then we'll be a bit further along the RPS journey. So things might be clearer then about what we need to implement that. So I think that's a good point. So thank you. Kia ora. Anyone else want to speak to the resolution, or should we put it to the vote? Good, let's put it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Any abstentions? Cool, carried. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to 8.4, and this is the It's Time Canterbury update. Let me find out who I'm calling to the table here. Rebecca? Yeah. Right. Rebecca and Mark. So kia ora, welcome to the table. Looking forward to this because I understand we're going to have a video at some point too, so that should be exciting. And so this is a project that we've had up and running since the last long-term plan, and I know Councillor Southworth had a lot to do with getting this put in place. So just acknowledging you, Vicky. So looking forward to where we're at, and I know there's still work to be done in this space, but yeah, looking forward to the update.
Thank you, Chair. We're just getting the technology going. So
I knew the video is going to be tricky. Oh, there we go. It's almost there.
and it's the thing everyone's waiting for as well.
It's because you're excited about it.
Tēnā koutou katoa, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here today. Oh, we're on that one. I've got one on.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, the invisible one. Thank you for having us here today. We're just going to give you a brief update prior to the final campaign closure report being prepared at the end of September. So just covering off on where we've got to with the campaign so far and how it's been tracking. We approached this phase with a refreshed website, an increased media spend that was way more focused in a couple of particular areas, targeted digital activity, and also a couple of videos actually. So messaging again focused on what the community can expect to see as a result of the impacts from climate change, but we introduced some conversation about action, and that came in the form of the video. So we'll talk you through the results. These results, I'll give you a verbal update as well, because these results are based on the previous quarter, and during that time the campaign was pretty passive. It was when we were rebuilding the website and getting a few things up and running. So as you can see there, we've got some pretty dramatic results, but we can't read too much into some of them. So paid social media impressions, we received 434,579. This was actually an increase on 67% based on the last phase of campaign activity. So we're looking at it actively being out there in the market. So we're really, really happy with that. Website sessions, over 8,500 website sessions. That was an increase of over 200% on the previous active campaign phase. And the majority of the people that we saw using the website, around 6,800 users, the majority of those were actually new users, which was really good to see because we had evolved it based on feedback from the previous site. So that was a really positive thing. The Google searches for It's Time Canterbury, it's a very impressive 500%. Again, we can't read too much into this. Google Analytics tracked how the analytics were monitored and reporting from the last campaign period. But what we do know is it's dramatically increased. This will be a good baseline for our next phase of activity. And it's really important because it gives us an indication about the media channels we use, like posters, billboards, radio, that we don't have that direct measurement from as we do from social media. So the campaign channels remained largely the same. As I said before, we really ramped up looking at the region-wide spread, and to get that spread into the sort of the wider reaching areas, we did a range of poster drops, and they were just sort of small A4s and they popped up everywhere, cafes, service stations, shops, really visible. and we got really good feedback on them. We did larger posters as well. We increased our billboards across the region, and we increased our radio. We also increased our social media, and we were really targeted with that, only focusing on people who reside within Canterbury. And then the staff and Met service paid digital advertising was also increased, and we saw a really good result from that. In the Greater Christchurch area, we focused on doing some bus backs, which we hadn't done before, and got a good result from them, as well as bus shelters. So that was where it was contained. We also took part in sponsoring Speaking for the Planet, a youth event. And so that was one of the first events that we'd actually been along to and sought some interactive feedback from the event. And this just shows you a range of different materials. In the middle at the top, there's just a very simple little poster that we took along to Speaking for the Planet, and that was great. Everyone just sort of wrote their thoughts and some interesting comments on there. Top left, you can see some of the posters, and then obviously the billboards in the bottom, which we got a lot of feedback on. And that's again just a range of activity. You can see the digital ads are more animated now, and we got a really good response to them. And on the bottom right, we have the bus backs, which took a slightly different approach, and we only advertised on electric buses. So Mark's going to give you a little overview of the video work that we've been doing. Over to you.
Yeah, good everyone. The first video project we've been working on is actually still in progress. We tapped in a friend, Fiona, to come with us one day to film 7 short videos. Excuse me. Each focusing on one of the 7 climate impacts that we have on the It's Time Canterbury website. Around 20 to 30 seconds each, and they were made to be just sort of evergreen, high level, reinforcing the messaging. And so, yeah, they can be used again and again, hopefully for the next year or two in campaign work. Where we're at the moment is they've been shot, and we're just looking at ways with our design team to integrate the new It's Time Canterbury style excuse me, into the video. So there's going to be a bit more movement and that sort of thing. Fiona is great on screen, obviously, but yeah, having that stuff to reinforce the It's Time Canterbury branding and the messaging. Yeah, we're quite excited about how they're going to end up. And the other video projects, this is the big one that we worked on for the last few months. So we were put in touch with Kerepeti Paraone, who's a filmmaker who whakapapas to Ngāti Whiki, to produce a video for us. We met with him initially just for a discussion about It's Time Canterbury and give him a rough idea of the sort of content we were after. But what we really wanted was him to take the idea back to the community and discuss with them what story they wanted to tell. So that's what we did. We might as well just show the video now.
Auraki's grandson, Tūtraki whānau, the harbours and mountains of this peninsula that we know today. It was Kahukura who covered this land in a great forest, the Ngāhere o Kahukura, and Marukura who covered the sea with a great abundance of kaimoana. It's all around us, that story. There's no small coincidence that they called the place Te Pātaka o Rakai Hurtu, the great food storehouse, the great pantry. People talk about the time when the harbour boiled with the abundance of fish.
I was born back in the 60s. Back then, our people here in Rapaki sort of relied on mahinga kai. There were mutton bird here, oysters here, scallops were here.
At least 10 different species of paua and mussel, kutai, and snails, etc.
We would go down to the beach and share the kai around the hapu.
It was so plentiful. They're all gone.
Unfortunately, I guess, disappeared due to pollution and climate change.
Tie that to change in the tidal flow because our foreshore got covered in sediment from deforestation. It had a profound effect.
Looking at the high tide mark here, well, as a kid, this would be a super tide. Farming, urban development, and all those sorts of things has been a major player. The runoff goes straight into the harbour.
We've certainly dropped the ball when it comes to our kaitiaki responsibility. There are the last few remnants of the original forest. Today, I see it as our responsibility to nurture them back to what once existed here.
So if we don't fix the whenua, we don't fix the water.
Trying to create the original environment that we had was the best goal for us in mitigating climate change.
Our Kaimahi teams are part of replanting the kahiri on the maunga to restore biodiversity.
We eco-source all our seedlings from the original forest to ensure its survival for thousands of years into the future.
We've gotten traps because the less roads we have, the more likeliness birds will be able to move in, spread the seeds. Hopefully we'll be able to rely on nature to just do its thing rather than having to rely on people to plant the trees for us.
The work that's been done in this catchment has just been phenomenal.
This whole place is changing for the better, definitely, and it's definitely been picking up over the past few years.
Our stream just up here is running immaculately. It's come back with full life.
There's a place where you can use Mātauranga Maori and modern day science to get us back to what it used to be.
If we encourage and teach our kids now, they will understand that they will be the next holders to keep our mahina kai alive in our streets.
Everything is connected. From the top of the hills to the bottom of the seabed. That's our responsibility. That's our kaitiakitanga responsibility. We must keep driving that. We support the whenua supports us.
So as Mark said, we took a very different approach to producing this piece. We wanted it to be genuine and reflective of the people involved. We didn't want to go in and say, here is our messaging, boom, 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 and now sort of repeat it back to us. It had to come from everyone, and we were really thrilled. We focused on the process and the outcome more than also being constrained by timeframes around campaign activity. And I think this is an example of where sometimes it doesn't work to do that. We need to give people time, to craft their videos, to get people involved, to get the buy-in. So we're looking, moving forward, at some more projects like this where they're not time critical. It's more about the quality of how we work together and what comes out at the end, rather than saying we're going live with this on June the 29th. We've also shared it. It went live 3 weeks ago. It's been shared on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Obviously passed on to partners, shared by Tuia and Ngaitahu as well, or shared with them. It's been viewed 4,000 times so far in 3 weeks. It's had 6,000 impressions across social media and 170 reactions, which is really good because it's people just going a bit further than actually going, yeah, I'm watching it and then tuning out. We've also, at the start of this, discussed that the video content, the raw footage, is available for use by Ngāti Wheki if they want to repurpose it for something. So it's not just a sort of a one-off project and then it's in the can. We aim to keep reusing the assets and promoting and sharing it. So feel free to do so yourselves. So next steps are to do the campaign closure report by the end of September, and that will be a really detailed breakdown of what we've seen throughout this phase of activity and an overarching summary for the last year of activity. We need to confirm the commitment and interest and availability of local council resource. We move forward with this phase with very little of that again, and I think we need to accept the reality that that's not happening at the time being because of capacity issues and other priorities. So definitely still having those conversations and seeking feedback and input as we move forward. So the active participation is what we're really looking from our partners here. We see it as a platform that has a lot of potential to evolve and grow. Now we've tidied it up and focused on the user experience. It gives us the opportunity to take it in a whole lot of different directions. So it's just where do we take it from here? One area we see it being really useful is to support the Canterbury Climate Partnership Plan activity as that rolls out across the region, and hopefully that is another reason for other councils to get on board and start using the platform, because they will have a presence there. So next step for us is the post-campaign report, seeking feedback. So we encourage anyone to provide feedback, positive, negative or otherwise, to us, and we'll be looking at the strategy for the next phase of activity. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Yeah, questions? Councillor Davies.
Hello. So were the climate impact videos done in-house?
Yeah, they were. We contracted a videographer, but I mean, it was just really us and him and Fiona on the day, and all of the animation design work is being done in-house as well.
Any discussion around using our democratically elected leaders in its time Canterbury, as per the questions asked at the last committee?
Yes, we have, and we're completely open to that. So it's just as and when the opportunity comes about, if they feel it aligns to something, or if we see an opportunity to align it to somebody, then we're completely open to that. I think really good opportunities in the video space, and as we indicated last time, this is sort of dipping our toe in the water with video. It's been all about bringing it up to what our users need, the basics. Now we're in that space and we're doing a lot more in-house. It gives us more flexibility to be nimble and capture even small snippets, and be really responsive to something that might just pop up, as well as longer burn pieces. So yes, absolutely.
Thanks, Councillor Davies. Vicky, and then got Ian.
Yeah, I just wondered if you had any feedback on the Speaking for the Planet feedback that you captured then. Was there any particular difference between what you were hearing from that?
Mark can probably speak to that because he actually attended the event, but there were some interesting comments, I'll say that.
Yeah, a lot of it was pretty similar stuff to what we hear. So the two sides of the poster we had were how is your life being impacted by climate change, something like that, and then what action are you taking in your life? And so it was a lot of on the left side with the impacts that people are feeling. It was, floods, increased temperatures, that sort of thing. And on the right hand side, the action people are taking, things like taking the bus. That event, I'm not sure if you were there for any of it, but a lot of it was about sustainability and the fashion industry, like fast fashion and that kind of thing. There were a lot of comments about, I'm not going to shop at such and such because it's fast fashion. So yeah, nothing unexpected, but yeah, great to see these, 12, 13-year-old kids engage with it in that way.
You just made me think about it. So capturing that, what we're doing, what actions we're taking, that's something I have seen on some other climate websites and the like, are like little videos of people, normal regular folks doing regular little things that they can do, or projects that are as well also that doing something, and just little snippets. So that might be an idea for the future. I'm sure you've crossed that already.
Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I thought the video, the Rapaki video, was fantastic. It tells a really good story. But then I read your campaign material, which is forecasting a apocalypse. Rising temperatures, drought, lightning, and fire, and yet you then got Rapaki planting up Banks Peninsula and making it a fire hazard. Given if these predictions are accurate, and this is what we're threatening our community with, long grass and scrub is a real danger. So I guess my concern is, are we sort of connecting up our messaging? I mean, I'm not saying Rapaki shouldn't be planting their hillsides and native vegetation, all for that. But if we're threatening our community with the apocalypse, and it reminds me of when I was a wee fella and I had the occasion to visit my grandmother who lived in London at the time, and on every street corner there was a chappie, slightly unwashed, hairy-looking fellow with a sandwich board saying the end of the world is nigh. Now we're predicting the end of the world, but are we trying to link the end of the world forecast with something constructive to do to actually mitigate those risks? And if you're planting a fire hazard, maybe, you know, are we considering actually how you then protect the urban communities on the banks from those fires? Because we've already seen the effect that fires have. And you just look at what's happened in Hawaii, where it was fire started in a rural area, but then obliterated a whole town.
I'll jump in there because I know a little bit about the planting that's happening at Rapaki. And
just, I'm not criticising the planting, to make that very clear.
The point is that we have had the fire service engaged actually around that, because the residents of the Kāinga are concerned about fire risk for sure, and that's something that we've taken into account. And some of the assessments that come back from the fire service was that, you know, leaving it in rank grass, because we don't have grazing at the moment, is more of a fire risk than what we're doing. So anyway, so definitely taking into account. So I don't think there's going to be mixed messages for the community. Actually, I think people can see that that's a good action to take, especially when it's along the corridor of the street. So that's what it shows. I don't know if the staff really need to answer the question, because how can they?
Hang on, let me just make it clear. I was using the Rapaki as an example. I'm not. There's no criticism of what you're doing there, but I've lived in rural communities with high fire risk where the whole of Canterbury stopped. Rural Canterbury, when in the 60s, stopped doing anything because the fire risk was so great. You stopped all machinery. One spark could have burnt the whole of the region. And so I understand living with fire risk. It's a lot less now than it was because we've got irrigated pasture where we used to just have dead grass and you know, cereal crops and things. But if we're moving to a, you know, restrict water use and a land use change and more urban, more semi-urban sprawl rather than true rural stuff, and close down the dairy industry and all these other things that we're sort of threatening, and then you've got climate change impact on top of that, and we increase that fire risk again. We need to think about the things we should be doing and we shouldn't be doing. And yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I think the policy decisions that, like you have mentioned, are something, you know, for our RPS in particular, rather than this campaign, which was really about informing people of some of the risks that are going forward so that they can engage with them. And, you know, I'm pretty confident that the things that I've seen on those slides are things that are likely to happen. And our science team have obviously worked on them and put that forward. I get what you're saying, Ian, about, you know, putting the fear in people. But this campaign was designed to get engagement. And I think you can see from the results we've got that we are getting engagement. In terms of how we respond to that, that is the next step. And I think some of the comments from councillors around how do we go forward, Vicky's one about having videos of what people are actually taking action on. I think that's a really good idea. And I'm sure our team have listened to that. Councillor Davies, in terms of getting councillors involved to speak to some of these issues as well. We can definitely have you there, Ian, speaking to your community about some of the issues. So I think that is a good thing for the next phase, because that's what I sort of wanted to understand, that there is one more for this current year of the project left. And the September is about that last phase sort of review, and then there's still some more time to do some more work in this current financial year. Have I got that right?
Yes, that's right. I think just touching on a couple of things there, really the view and the strategy to start with was it's for the entire region. It's not just for Greater Christchurch. So we're really mindful of that when we go out. So we're looking at, you know, hundreds of thousands of different points of view from people who might think they're responding by buying fashion that's not fast fashion, who might go out and plant trees, who might go out and do something else. So I think putting out video pieces is definitely going to be a core to moving forward. The trick with that is getting a few in the bag, so you're going out with a few different points of view at one time with some of those short videos, so you're giving people different things that they can sort of identify with and respond to. So that's definitely part of what we're looking at moving forward. Yeah, but we are always mindful that it's to represent the whole of the region. So, you know, bringing in other mayors, other councillors, well-known business people, people who are just known in their community for being great people and doing good things is really, it's meant to be a platform for all views. And we take the view that we're encouraging and reinforcing the scientific and the evidence base that we know with those local stories and individual stories feeding into it.
Greg. Good, thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, some of you might remember early in this term there was a massive fire out at Tuhaitara, and about 140 hectares. What was really pleasing after the fire went through and literally destroyed all of the pine plantations was the fact that about 35 of the biota nodes that were in there, which are fundamentally native plantings, appropriate plants within that area, survived. Fire that beside them burnt pine trees, rank grass to the ground, these things. So that might be something. I'm happy, and I know Craig's involved with the Greening the Plains project, so you've got some expertise within the building about the benefits of putting natives, cooling an environment as a forest, all of that type of thing. So yeah, thought I'd put 2 bobs with that. Got a question?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. In terms of that multi digital board stuff that you've got with the posters and things, and one of them, for example, our community will experience more extreme weather. Will some of your videos actually show some of those effects of extreme weather that we've already been having, like erosion of the coast or flooding of the rivers or whatever? Does it?
Yes, it is. And Mark actually did a story. So some things may be video, but others may be a written story or a social media post. So Mark did a great story. Did you want to talk to him about the CDM story?
Yeah, so after the cyclone and the anniversary day floods up north, I went down and talked to the team at CDEM about to some of the people who went up there to help out, and just about generally preparedness, and like we should be expecting these kind of things to happen in Canterbury, and gives people some ideas about what they can do to prepare. There's probably actually enough from my chat with them to do another article or two to sort of follow that on. But yeah, in terms of getting footage of it, like if we can get footage of it, then that would be great, especially if it's Canterbury specific. We can show footage from around the country if that's where the impacts are, and say this is, this is the sort of thing that we might expect. But yeah, it's we're pretty open to what things we want to tell stories about.
So we take our lead from science, and we work closely with strategy and other experts in the areas. So it's definitely going to be a mixture moving forward, and it's a mixture of what are the impacts versus what are the actions, and talking more about the actions and getting a broader view of those actions, as I said before, from individuals to large organisations to councils.
Sort of ask the question because it seems to me the public is still a little bit naive about the dangers that are coming, and a lack of awareness of what's happening in Canterbury. I mean, people think that it's maybe not going to affect them or whatever, and it's really just, I suppose, a way of getting that awareness out there and saying, okay, coastal erosion, South Canterbury, the sea's coming in a really high tide. It's coming in 100 metres. The impact in terms of the messaging about these things in terms of future adaptation and mitigation, just starting to give some clues to people about what might they need to think about for future.
Councillor Edge. Any other questions for our staff? Oh, Oscar. Got it.
This is more of a comment, but I just think generally with the idea of putting videos of what's actually happening up and making people aware of what's actually going on, I think there's also a need that if that happens, for it to be strategically aligned with things that council is actually moving on, because I think the problem you get is that you basically terrorize people into knowing that there's something really big coming and happening that's going to be really bad for them. When they ask what's going on and see that maybe what's being talked about isn't necessarily being followed by clear and strategic council action, then it's just a bit of like a taking the piss, I guess. Yeah.
We certainly don't intend to do that. So that's why we work very closely with strategy and science.
That's good. Any other questions? All good. Hey, thanks, guys. Really awesome update. Nice, and the video was great. And I'm really interested in that sort of next phase and how much we can get those other TAs to participate. And I know that the climate action partnership plan that you mentioned that we'll talk about in the next item is really important part of that. So it is great that we do have a platform. So really good insight from Councillor Southworth and I think Councillor Elizabeth McKenzie last term as well to help get this campaign up and running. So thank you. Awesome work. So we've got some resolutions on the table there again to receive the report, to note the progress that's been made in this last phase, and also about the next step. Like we said, there's a closeout report for this phase, and then there's work to carry on in the next phase of the work for the rest of this financial year. So have I got a mover? Alice, kia ora, Alice. Any seconder? Councillor Robinson, great. Do you want to speak to this, Alice, at all? And Genevieve, would you like to speak to it? No? Anyone else would like to make a comment or discussion about this? No? All good? Okay, all those. Oh, sorry. Oh, where you go. Where you go.
I was just because I feel slightly embarrassed that my nephews mentioned it. I literally, it was just the kickoff at the start, and what's really exciting to see how staff have picked up the budgets and worked it into something that is gaining traction, that has got that support and connection across the region and with the TAs in particular. And I think that's really important that we keep that connection and common themes and messaging and working together. So and it's very exciting. I love having these things come back, but yeah, I don't really play much credit anymore because the staff are really doing it all. So thank you.
Hold on, Vicky. So I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Abstentions? Carried. Thank you. We're going to move to 8.5, which is the report from the chair. Oh, scary stuff. No. So I'll take you to page 55. There's a number of things that are highlighted here in the report. In particular, the recent council submissions that we've done. So there was an emissions trading scheme submission that we did recently. Also, a submission on the, also made a submission to the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet on resilience. So definitely in this topic area, two key things there. We've also had our meetings, regular regional partnership meetings, Greater Christchurch Partnership and the Mill Forum, as well as the Civil Defence Emergency Management Group, which if any of those councillors would like to speak to them, they can in a moment. Likewise with our youth rōpū, and Alice and Oscar may want to speak to this as well. Lots of good work happening across the region in this space. Highlight the work of the integrated planning framework, which we've heard a little bit about today in relation to the coastal plan work, etc., and where that's heading in the future. And the main thing there is about the engagement process, the first phase of that went on in July and August. We've had a good feedback about that process to date. There's obviously some work to do at the moment, especially with our partnership with Ngaitahu. And then there'll be another round of engagement coming later in October. And there's a whole process going out till next December for the development of that plan and the consultation and engagement around that. So lots more to come in that space. And then again, the regional climate partnership plan, which people may remember was a topic of discussion and some debate actually at our last meeting of this committee. And that was about the overarching strategic plan for the partnership plan that went to the Merrill Forum recently for endorsement. And now we're moving on to the next phase of that. So you'll remember that I'm the representative for our council on that. Dan Gordon is the chair of that partnership group. And we have representatives from every TLA in Canterbury, and we're all working towards this overarching partnership plan. And if you want to turn to page 58, you'll see that we're also doing our own climate action plan, which sits under that framework of the partnership plan. And the hope is that every TLA does their own action plan and that they sit together under the partnership plan. And then the partnership plan really brings together the common themes. There may be some common actions that we all have that we want to take together. and therefore we can streamline how we might fund those things. So in relation to Councillor Robinson's question before about the climate emergency, this is really the front end of that at the moment around how we're trying to coordinate everyone. So of course we know it's not just about what Environment Canterbury can do or should do, but what everyone in the region can do. So this is sort of how it's playing out. And some good leadership there at the Mayoral Forum, of course, and then with our work that our staff are doing on this. So of course these are all ongoing right at the moment, and that work's going on with our staff. And like I said, I think we've got our next meeting of the partnership group really soon. I saw an email about it yesterday, so that'll be the next iteration, and I'm sure we'll bring an update back to this committee as that work continues. So there's lots more engagement to go on that too with the public, and of course the Rūnanga in time. So does any of the other councillors want to update their little pieces of this? Anyone like to about what they've been up to yet? Councillor.
Just briefly on civil defence, we have had out through our notes, and we've had a significant number of briefings over the last week or so on civil defence matters. But given this is an open forum, just like to highlight, there's been a piece of work done on recommendations from the actions or inactions that happened in the North Island through the events of Gabrielle, the learnings that we have brought back into Canterbury from our staff, and an action plan. They all sort of sit with management of how we ensure that we keep building our resilience, our ability to work, and put our processes in place. So that piece of work is going on. Always a challenge to get our mayors fully engaged in conversations. To that end, we're having a regional, review of civil defence, and we're looking at a bunch of things around our resourcing, our people, our numbers, our programs, processes, and all the works that we've been hearing about of late all feed into that to give ourselves a picture of what Canterbury civil defence looks like, and then in relation to the new emergency management bill and some of those things that are coming through, the resilience questions and the like. And then we also had a really good conversation with Director John Price from NEMA, talking about some of those resilience questions again, river funding, how can we, best leverage those conversations, how can we get ourselves into resilient space. It's not just about rivers or people that live by rivers, it's about our roading networks, our rail, our telecommunications, our electricity, all those systems that are critical infrastructure in our minds. So how we take that forward. So some really good conversations there, and lots of pieces of work going on. I guess my one comment over the last couple of days or week or so is that we do have some, what seems a little from my perspective as your representative on joint committee, is some disparate conversations about pieces of research and work that's happening here, and conversations about resilient food over there. And so we are having a big conversation at a high level about all these issues, but there's a whole lot of other things happening in the organisation. And I just wonder, at some point, can we pull some of that together in a smaller group so that we're all aligned with the research, the understanding and the conversations, because they're all part of civil defence and resilience, but we just don't quite seem to be aligned with the work that Vicky's doing, some of the research and other pieces of work. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Councillor. Alice, kia ora.
Kia ora. So for the youth rōpū, we've been really working on trying to expand our networks. I guess over the last few months, we've had a few different activities. We had youth members go up to Wellington for Festival for the Future. And from that, there's been a Facebook page developed connecting different youth councils across Aotearoa. We had a Te Tiriti training where we got youth also to come along, which was cool. We've hosted our Future Canterbury, which had 18 young people attend, and we've also had a planting. I think the youth rōpū worked with staff to organise this, but there's 800 plants planted out near the Waimak, and now we're doing recruitment. So I think it has in the report that we're kind of changed our rōpū structure recently. We have decided to open up to having 20 members, mainly so we get attendance coming along to different events, as well as getting a bit more, I guess, diversity. We're increasing the mana whenua seats to 5, and we've cut back on, instead of having to have 2, I guess, members in each constituency, we've reduced that to a minimum of 1, with the goal of increasing it to 2, with the goal of having 2 members if possible. But also, if we get the right sort of applicants taking on general member roles, if we can't fill the constituencies. And so now we're going into a bit of a, I guess, engagement phase and developing a bit of a strategy to get a diverse range of applicants, because we have struggled with getting rural areas in the past. And our mana whenua hoi is working on engaging with the Runanga to, I guess, get more Māori applicants. Yeah, kind of feel right. Yeah.
Alice, thank you so much. Councillor Burns.
Kia ora, can I just follow on from that in regards to the youth report? It's in the previous paper, the Speaking for the Planet competition was mentioned, which I had, along with Councillor Robinson, going along to, which was awesome. I have to say that Poppy, who was one of the MCs of the event and a youth report member, was just exemplary, a great example of youth leadership. So I just wanted to make.
Right, Councillor Burns. Councillor Davies.
Just page 56, paragraph 6, to our GCP members. Is that incorrect, that date, the 12th of May?
Yeah, I was just looking at that and checking I had my calendar up. Yeah, so I presume it's to do with when the papers are put together, because the last meeting was actually on the 11th of August. And so there was a more recent meeting. I think the one that's in our paper here is reflecting sort of a key decision that around the the process for the spatial plan and the hearing. So I don't know, Councillor Edge wants to talk to that, because you're going to be on that hearing.
Just to follow up, just briefly, that the panel members have been have met once in a workshop, a 2-day workshop, and so the hearings are set down for late October, early November, and then a report will be prepared, and it'll come back to the wider Greater Christchurch Partnership Group.
Supplementary. With regard to the policy development of the RPTP, and thank you, Jesse, for circulating the decision that the previous council made in delegating out that development to the GCP. Do you have any update on that?
Can you just tell us what that acronym meant, that first one?
The Regional Public Transport Plan.
No, can't really. Jesse, maybe?
Yeah, Jesse, if you want to cover that, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, in terms of the regional public transport plan, that's under review at the moment. So we're looking to engage with the Greater Christchurch Partnership on that in the October meeting. Just to touch on quickly the last meeting of the GCP, the Greater Christchurch Partnership. So the meeting that was held in August was a briefing, but it was done in public. So that was an update on the joint housing action plan work, and also an update on the vehicle kilometres travelled reduction planning and the broader transport program as well. So it was all in a public space. So all of that material, if any councillors are interested, is available on the Greater Christchurch Partnership website. But the formal meeting was as referenced in the papers here, was the Whakamutunga Kāinga Committee meeting. So.
You happy with that, Councillor Davies?
Yeah, I just want to state on the record as well that any of those things that we have delegated out, particularly on RPTP, to the likes of sub-regional groups like the GCP, really I'd like to be kept across it as a regional councillor, because at the end of the day, it comes back to us.
To that point, it's in progress, and I don't think are any further really ahead of where you're at, but absolutely take that on board, and we will. Yeah.
Yeah, I think go to.
No, we have a subsequent Transport and Urban Development Committee coming up in October. So as things progress on all of these different work fronts, yeah, absolutely happy to keep the councillors involved on work that's happening in the Greater Christchurch space, work that's happening in the Regional Transport Committee space. How do we bring that back through that committee and anything else through council as well?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll come to you, Greg.
Just to sort of pick up as well in terms of, there was a very good event on what day are we on today? Wednesday, must be Monday night, which our staff member here, Jessie Burgess, spoke at, along with some others who, and through the Tapu Tahi, which was focused on public transport, and there were some excellent presentations, and it really was good the way it connected in with what we had a healthy or living streets presentation as a follow-on to the last August Greater Christchurch Partnership briefing session, and then through the spatial plan consultation, we've had like the blue-green networks, and there was support for space for cycling and people sort of sitting out in the streets and so on, to coordinate that alongside MRT, for example. That got a lot of support through our consultation work, and so it really feels like there's movement coming from the community and from our own sort of collecting of information and so on, and from sort of expertise coming in here to be progressing this sort of like shift in the way our city could feel and operate, and how we work, live within it, with public transport and other modes of transport, cycling, active modes of transport, all sort of connecting in, but with that blue-green network stuff, the shade, the trees, the biodiversity, all those things. It's like it's really there to have, and it feels like the different levels are all sort of heading in the same direction. So just some really good stuff. And so just feeding back on that, and that's online. So I don't know if there's a mechanism for us to put that up as a publicise it somehow through that Christchurch conversation, because it's particularly pertinent to what we're doing. Yeah.
Kia ora, Councillor Southwood. Yeah, Councillor Scott.
Yeah, completely off topic here, but got the ride bills coming up, I think in October. We get some sort of a timeline around that. I know that I've got one next week in Karakia and Timatanga to present the sort of those awards. But I know councillors were involved in them last year and have been involved in them in the past. Have we got an integrated program approach to that? And we need these young guys involved in it somewhere along the line too, because when we do that award session in here, I think we need to make sure that enough councillors are here.
Councillor Scott. Councillor Burns.
I'll just reiterate, so I was actually had my hand up because I was going to say something very similar. I too went along to Tūranga on Monday, and again I've made the comment to Jesse. He unfortunately was in the rotation following a very hard act, but he did the organisation a lot of service. He was very good. So I just again want that there. Just on the Rival Awards, and there's a number of them coming up at the moment. There's been quite a bit of email traffic moving. I do know that Councillor Robinson and Southworth are doing the Rival Awards, and I think I'm doing the Canterbury Westland Science and Technology Awards. So it's been happening in the backgrounds, but I think I absolutely concur and agree. If there's an opportunity for one of you two that are here, or someone from the youth Ropu to be involved with those, I think that's an absolutely brilliant idea. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cool.
Anyone else want to add anything to the report? Yeah, sorry, Claire, sorry.
And thank you. Sorry. And just trying to get numbers there. My understanding when this was set up, and I'm sure it was our first term of council, so maybe a couple of my fellow councillors here would understand, that it was to follow the existing council structure. It was basically a copy. So I'm just wondering if there is anything that we need to be aware of as a council. And I've just done a Google search and haven't been able to find anything, so I need to look in Docs on Tap. But yeah, so just wondering about that, and also then around the implications of going up to 20 members, and obviously perhaps some implications on our budgeting going forward. So
yeah, I don't know, because I don't know how it was originally set up and what it says there. But I think I've been involved in some of the recruitment processes in the last round in particular, and it is hard to always land two for each constituency. So I think the idea of just having at least one and aspiration to have two is a good idea, because it allows these guys to move on and not feel like they've got a gap. Increasing it to 20, I mean, I'm sure they've worked with TAF and the team to make sure the budget's not too much implicated there. But your point about doesn't need to come back, I'm not sure. Good question, but we can, yeah, TAF can make comment too. But
as one of the founding members at the same time, it would have been a lot of the structural stuff that includes the way we have a chair and a deputy and different things are very much. I was under the impression, I decided internally the representation model originally was just to ensure that when we first started engaging as a group, that there would be representation from across the region, because that's really important. It wasn't necessarily as like a, we're not, I think the important thing to know is the youth opera doesn't play like mini council, so it's not like sitting around a table voicing opinions in the same way. It was just to ensure that regional perspective, and that could have shifted since I've left, but that was the original aim of that. And then on the 20 members thing, I would like to know, I think I've noticed in other council meetings before, like the Ropu is an extremely like cheap group. No one is paid to be on it, and there's a lot of consultation that comes through those members and a lot of feedback given on plans, and the amount of extra feedback given on things like annual plan, long-term plan through a relatively simple measure that ECAN has got with Ropu is pretty significant. So like I would say, if there's implications on funding, like yeah, hit it up, increase it more. That's my yeah. That's where I'm sitting. Yeah, LTP.
Yeah, thank you through you, Chair. Yeah, my understanding was when it was set up as well that the Ropu themselves did the reflection of our council in order to have some structure and to be representative across the region. But I can take that on to go and check that, and I'll check the original resolution, and I can come back and we can talk about some budgeting pieces as well if that's required.
Kia ora. I would also like to say that we have, this is the second time that we've adapted the structure since that original way. This last year we've had 3 mana whenua instead of 2, and we've had the ability to have general members if we weren't able to fill those constituencies. We've just sort of formalized it a little bit more. And I think it's also important to say that, like, if we get 20 applicants, but some of the applicants aren't right for the Ropu, we're not going to accept them. We have like a max of 20, but that doesn't mean we will have to have 20. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Jess, you got it. Yep.
The regional partnership for the climate change plan, paragraph 16. Just to update you as well, since the publishing of the papers. So Environment Canterbury endorsed the partnership plan back in July. Both Selwyn District Council and Waimakariri District Council have also endorsed, subject to some feedback being provided as well on the plan, as we did take back from our council as well. And CCC, Christchurch City Council and Ashburton both have briefings pending on that as well. We're working with the other councils across the region to progress that through their councils as well. So I just want to add that to the paper.
Yes, awesome. Cool. Is that? I think that seems like it's all there. We'll go to the resolutions then and bring them up. That's a pretty simple one. This one, just to you'll move it. Oh yeah, thank you, Councillor Davies. So moved by Councillor Davies. Anyone want to second it? Councillor Robinson, thank you. Don't think we need a discussion. We've had pretty good go on it. So all those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Cool, thank you. So our next item was to go to public excluded, but we don't need to do that because we've already signed off those minutes and the resolution status report. So we'll go to next meeting, which is the 15th of November. And Ian, have you got a karakia to close us? And thanks everybody for their work today. Thanks staff. Great variety of briefings this morning and meetings this afternoon. So thank you.
Yeah, all right. Anohia, ki te uru tapu nui o tane, kia watia, kia mama, te nā kau, te tinana, te wairua, I te ara takata, koia rā e rongo, whakaari ake ki ranga, kia tina hami e hui e takia.
Got it, Ian. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. Kia ora.